Vampyra, tu fais un accord, tu lui donnes ton sang et tu donnes la gloire. Si tu es ouvert d'esprit comme un génie qui s'ennuie, laissant pour la gloire, ça peut sembler pas à moi. Bientôt tu es piégé, ton énergie est dépensée, tes relations sont tendues, tes projets abandonnés. Elle en veut de plus en plus, elle tombe de moins en moins. Tu perds ta libido, tu es seul dans un coin. Vampyra, Vampyra, tu prends plus que tu ne donnes. Vampyra, Vampyra, où est mon monde? Vampyra n'est pas la belle du bal, mais sa chanson des sirènes va faire le mal. Elle a beau le toucher d'une femme, mais elle les séduit pour la subsistance. Elle cherche des hommes glaciaux pour en faire des matriarches. Vampyra, 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 où est mon monde? So, I have had an unfortunate tendency throughout my life to attract these sorts of relationships where I'm being kind of owned almost, or controlled by the other person who wants to kind of clamp onto what I'm doing with my life and whatever it is I have going on in my world, and kind of present it to their world as their own by showing me off as this kind of project rescue token person. And it's a very strange dynamic, and it's not something that I consciously invoke into my life, and I find it rather unpleasant. But as I've gone through the psychological depths of my shadow work, I've come to understand the ways in which we recreate patterns of trauma from our past by repeating that pattern in our relationships. And so it's not something I want, but it's something that part of me is holding on to and not releasing until I look at it and acknowledge it and find the self-love to accept it and release it. And it's almost as though I would just go through a chain of these controlling relationships by using the next controlling relationship as a way of escaping the previous one, because the circumstances surrounding the new ownership relationship were in some way preferable to the current one, as opposed to just being completely independent. I had a fear maybe of just being on my own. But as I've done a lot of psychological work in the past couple years especially, and been very single and very independent, I've probably done away with this pattern a lot, I mean, I don't even have that many close relationships right now anyway, but the ones that I would call close are very independent. We're very not codependent people. We just see each other when we see each other, and we love each other, and there's no ownership whatsoever going on. So I think I'm moving past this. But I wrote this song when I was still more or less in the throes of a particularly controlling relationship with a woman, and it wasn't really a romantic relationship, but we were very close. And I wanted to write this song about the feeling of being taken advantage of by a psychic vampire and how it had happened. And what a psychic vampire is someone who kind of preys on the emotional and psychological energy of other people through all kinds of manipulative tactics. And this all sounds kind of extreme, but I mean, look at the makeup I'm wearing right now. I'm in it right now. And I didn't want the person who I was currently involved with, or who is kind of still in my life anyway, I didn't want her to know that it was about her, and I didn't want her to recognize herself in the song or have any clue to it. So that's why I made it in French. And once I made it in French, it started taking on this kind of like 1960s French pop feel. And when I produced this song for my album that I put it on, that was definitely the genre I was going for. But also when I am talking about subject matter like psychic vampires, I think about like gothic things and vampire-y things and like industrial electronica music that would come with that fashion style. But it's not really a musical genre I've ever really worked in, but you know, music is music, so I can kind of mess around with calling things different things. So yeah, that's how this song came about and why it's in French. And I don't really even want to get too much into the details of the relationship that it's about, because I still, for one thing, wouldn't want them ever to know that, or have anyone who's not supposed to recognize them in it recognize it. But also, you know, mistakes were made on both sides. I don't want to present something like I'm totally a victim and they're a perpetrator or anything like that. It's just this pattern in our lives that we were repeating, and we have to escape it. And I have this song now as a relic of that past me who was getting into this pattern, and hopefully it won't happen again. But that's my song, Vampyra. Thank you for listening.